Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Kaspersky Transatlantic Cable Podcast. For the first time in a long time, we're all on the same
So my name is Jeff Esposito. I'm the head of regional social media at Kaspersky. I oversee everything that goes out on our social media channels across the world. My team ranges from Hong Kong all the way down to Bogota, Colombia, and everywhere in between.
And how did you get to social media?
So social media was funny. I had a boss at a previous job when I was a PR manager, and she threw a Wired magazine at me that said Twitter was this next big thing, so to figure it out, stupid, is what she said to me when she threw it. And then that day back in 2007 was the start of my career from being a PR person to being a social media communications person. And my job has changed a whole lot since. I don't have to be as nice with what I say.
And today, PR or social media, what will you choose?
I would choose social media over PR. I think the reason is that the industries are an interesting spot. I think it's more of a hybrid industry than it is two separate disciplines. I think when I look at our global corporate communications team, I think there's a lot of places where gray is right now. So things that used to be traditional media are dying out, where things that would be seen traditionally as social media are now getting penetrated by the media. Like how many reporters have podcasts? How many reporters have blogs? How many people jump from one place to another? So I think it's an evolutionary area. So I think communications is probably a better word of doing it. So I wouldn't want to choose and make you angry with me.
And do you believe, for example, that one day press release will disappear and we only have Twitter and brands will only communicate through social media?
I really hope not. I really do hope not. I think when I look at it, there's still a need for a press release. I think when you look at something in communications, yes, I troll you all about them all the time. But the nature of it is it gets information out there to the press. I think one of the problems we see now in the world is that the press has become a blood sport where they're not traditionally reporting the news and are turning into something where they're a part of making the news. Like I come from the US. I like to make fun of it at times because our news that is supposedly open and free journalism is more one-sided politically than even some of, state-owned media channels in various countries. So that's something that disturbs me when you look at it. And I think I went into things thinking to be a better place with PR, and I still think there's a way for that. But when you look at that type of thing, where is that line? And I think a press release still plays in that. Will it change? Yes. Like I think back to 2007, people called them dead. And I'm pretty sure I got an email from you this week that you were rolling one out. So I think looking at it, there's a need for it. And when you look at some developing markets, press releases are news in a sense, because they still come out and are covered and picked up by various news outlets that might not be as well funded as something in a separate part of the world.
Okay, so let's talk about social media and brands. What are the things that brands should never talk about in social media?
Whew, that's a tough one. I think when you look at it, brands have to protect who they are. And I think when you look at a brand, they generally stand for something. So when you look at, Kaspersky, we're future-driven, we're technology, we're cyber-immune, all the nice buzzwords that you want to put. But I think there's a few topics that you never want to talk with if you're a brand. One being politics. Two, being sexual relationships. Three, any type of religion, because those things will always get into types of fights. Yes, some brands do it that they make sense, but for the most part you want to avoid those types of areas because you're bound to set somebody off. For brands on social media, you always want to be honest and truthful. You don't want to be somebody that's lying. So that's a big part for brands to avoid. One other part with it is going away from what their brand message is. So you want to be who you are. Like if you look at a brand like Wendy's, who always gets picked up in these trend magazines with doing so great, it's because they're able to be edgy. But if you look at their target customer, we're talking about a 15 to a 21-year-old adolescent who's looking to buy things and looking to eat junk fast food, and is probably somebody who isn't as tight to conformity as you would be. But then you see other brands, like if you look at Apple, for example, they're very simplistic when they put anything out, which matches what it is they do. For Kaspersky, we try to get everything out there for our brand and cover all the markets we do, whether it's enterprise, whether it's industrial cybersecurity, whether it's threat research. our products cover everybody. No matter what shape or size you are, we've got you covered.
If a business breaks a social media rule, what are the consequences?
It depends on how bad you do on something. If you look at brands associating themselves with people, or certain political themes, you can get into some trouble. There's been some that have been canceled, if you will. I know that's a popular word by a lot of people now, but in general, the best thing to do is to admit you made a mistake and, take the punches you're gonna get. The good part is the internet is very trolly. It's got a lot of people who have the internet as a soapbox. They can get mad about something and they don't have to, sit there with their face. So I think brands need to realize, okay, look, the person managing account, this is going after the company, not me individually. So yes, there's gonna be pain. You're going to feel it, you're human, but how do you get out of it? And I think, you have to trust your peers, and I think every company should have a crisis communications plan, which would mean that you're talking to somebody, not just from your team, but also somebody from somewhere like public relations. If you're a public company, investor relations, or government relations when you have things there. And I think that's one of those areas that you have to take it on the chin. If you screw up, you screw up. We're all human, everybody gets it. But the fact of the matter is, how can you build upon there?
You do podcast on a regular basis, so tell us how to do it professionally.
So podcasting is something that's interesting. I've seen a lot of brands getting up and really trying to get into the space lately. We were one of them. We started, really hot before the pandemic. We did a lot of things with them. It was a request from the business, try to get something going on news. We run a show now with myself and 2 of my employees. We tend to interview people, we'll talk to people in the PR department if they have stories coming up, they need to get spokespeople out, so we'll do that as a segment. But we typically cover 4 to 6 news articles and give personal takes on them. Usually, not always without comedy. Never gonna give you up, never gonna say goodbye. There's usually a lot of jokes that go on with them. So when we look at it, one of the things that we try to focus on is how do we get a story out there. So for companies, it's what do you want to talk about? For us, we know that people are busy, whether you're an SMB, you're a large business, you're somebody who works in a SOC, you're somebody who likes security, you've got a lot of stuff going on and you probably missed the news. We get paid to read the news. Fact of the matter, that's just something we do. So we really go through that and we make sure everything works. And we get the ones that are, the most buzzworthy stories. So we know what stories are popular. Right now, Revil has been something that everybody's talking about, them getting arrested or them having their back and forths. Cryptocurrency scams is another big one. And for this week's show that we're recording tomorrow, we're gonna be looking at vigilantes going after crypto scammers, which I think is just fascinating. The internet is a beautiful place. Come on, that movie, Don't F with Cats, that's what's going on now in this cryptocurrency space. But I'm not sure there's going to be as weird stuff as that movie, though.
What do you need to make a podcast?
So to make a podcast, you need a few things. One's a microphone. 2 is some type of recording software, anything from a Skype recorder to a web-based platform, or a mixing file if you're going to do it yourself. You could even get it done with a MacBook and GarageBand. You need a good microphone as well, and then you have to have something interesting to say. Because while everybody can make a podcast, I don't think everybody should make a podcast because there's a lot of boring people out there.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the question. So there are a lot of podcasts now. Do you believe that they stay with us for a long time or just a boom and it will end soon?
Well, the internet never forgets. So anything that's on there is going to be out there in perpetuity as long as, the cables are still around and we still have power. That we don't hit one of those Godzilla effects that we lose all power and things like that, zombie apocalypse. But I think in general, podcasts will be around to stay. I think that you'll see a consolidation because a lot of people aren't gonna wanna put in the effort. There's been times where we've literally talked about the ROI of the Kaspersky podcast, of how much people effort is put into what output we get out of it. And I think we've kind of taken the approach in some areas where we've used PR metrics to look at the value of something. Which probably sounds weird since, we joke about metrics a lot, but we've used one of those to keep the podcast, as a viable source because it fits into a need that we have as a company. So is it always the most effective? No, but I think it depends on what your communications outlet is. So the same thing with the PR area. Is a byline in a tiny magazine that's super targeted as good as getting something in Time magazine? Probably some areas it is. If you're getting to a very niche people that sell a certain product, you've got the right audience in front of you, not a broad base. Yes, more people might see about you in one, but the potential buyers are in another one. So it's a matter of quality over quantity in that case.
Yeah, that's true. That depends on the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, actually, that's all the questions I have. Super.
Hopefully I was nice and easy for you.